Twirl says, how does one start a shadow practice? Oh my goodness, this is a big question. For starters, you need to know what that is for yourself. You have to first define it. If you want to do shadow work, you have to first decide what that is and define it, because there's a lot of different definitions. And for some, shadow work is so intense and so deep and so challenging that it's only safe and worth doing with a qualified like mental health professional. For others, shadow work is the concept of just deeply going into yourself. And if you feel safe to do that and you feel equipped to do that, then cards can be a great tool to assist. I like to, when I'm working with cards for shadow work, I like to work with cards that are going to call me out because that's what I'm looking for. So I might grab my emotional baggage deck here. Oh, I got to change my view again. I might grab Reclaim. I might grab, where's my little, hello? Oh, there you are. I might grab Deviant Moon. I'm just going to grab the mini because it's here. Okay. So Deviant Moon's great for me, for shadow work, because I find that the cards tend to lean a little bit more towards a shadowy meaning just by the way that they're depicted. Zoom it in because these are teeny. These are so little. Here's my finger. They're so little. For example, in the Justice card, we can see a creature being held in one hand. We can see a creature under their robe. This is not fairness. There's something unfair going on here, right? In the Seven of Pentacles, where we're normally reflecting on what seeds have been planted and how things are going, here this person is poking the tree and making it bleed in their eagerness to check on how things are going. Are we maybe being a little too aggressive and assertive in how we're checking on things? Are we being too micromanagey, a little too controlling in trying to control? You know what I mean? So this tends to lean towards, here we have the Nine of Cups, a positive card, but we already know stories of genies and lamps and how the wishes can get turned on their head and be misused, right? So this deck helps me to look for the more shadowy meaning and get out of my own way when I don't want to see those difficult truths. So I like decks like this that have a slightly more, because of the nature of the art style, the fact that it leans a little creepier and darker, I'm more likely to look for the more shadowy interpretation that I don't want to see, right? Look at this Eight of Cups. She's like literally trying to avoid looking at where she's invested, and she's walking. So using a tarot deck that helps you to see the more shadowy meaning can be helpful. It also helps to come to a shadow work practice of cards with knowing what you're going to ask and asking questions that are in alignment with how you view shadow work. So if you're like, I want to know what bad habit or negative trait, this is only one way to look at shadow work. We're going to clarify. What negative trait might I be ignoring, not working on, avoiding thinking about or looking at or making progress on? And then I might pull a card to answer that question, right? Sometimes though, shadow work has three types in my view. Again, everything is caveated with these are my interpretations, my opinions. But for me, shadow work can be one of three things. It can be something difficult about ourselves or our experience that we have sort of shoved away because we have compartmentalized and we don't want to address it, deal with it, work on it, grow from it. It's uncomfortable. It's easier to avoid than to face, that kind of thing. So that's like the negative sort of stuff. Then you have neutral things. These are things that just happen to be qualities about yourself or things about your experience or things about your way of looking at the world that you've compartmentalized because they're just easier to ignore than to address. Again, these can be neutral things. They don't have to be negative. And then there's positive things about ourselves that we pocket away because maybe we were shamed for them. Maybe we were told, like maybe you used to sing out loud in the car as a kid and like you always had a parent or a sibling make fun of you every time you sang. So now you don't sing, but you might have a beautiful voice. You might enjoy singing, but you've compartmentalized it because it's something that has negative associations or that you've just learned to hide away. So shadows, things that we put into shadows are not always negative things. They're just often things that we have buried, hidden, or avoid looking at for a variety of reasons. So again, you have to I think you should come to the cards if you're going to do shadow work with cards with a question that helps you peek into that. So an easy way to do that is to literally ask cards, any deck that you think will do good at this. You can even just use a regular old Rider-Waite-Smith. And a lot of people actually find it easier to do shadow work with really uplifting, positive looking cards, because it's just less beat you over the head. I happen to like a little self-flagellation, so I tend to go to darker cards that are going to call me out. That's what I like. I feel like that helps me to be honest with myself, but some people might want a gentler touch. Reclaim is it's basically a deck of emotions, a deck of emotional experience. And so this can be really poignant. So I might say, what is one thing currently in my shadow that I have not been addressing lately or that I'm currently ignoring, but that is having an impact on my life, my day-to-day life in the present. So I will shuffle a deck like Reclaim for that. Ooh. And remember, because Reclaim isn't all, I just totally messed up that shuffle. Because Reclaim is a deck that does not have just negative cards in it. So you'd want to use, for this, I think you want to use a balanced deck, something that has neutral, positive, and shadowy associations. Actually, my upcoming, I swear to God, I'm not trying to plug all the time. I just can't, I'm excited about my stuff. But Unicorn's Journey Oracle has a balance of positive, neutral, and shadow intentionally baked into its structure. So that might be a cool one to do this sort of thing, this sort of work with. For me, it'll be perfect because it's all the stuff that anyway. I designed it, so it's going to be perfect for me for that. But anyway, okay, so shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. So something in my shadow. Oh, look, we have denial. So now I can add tarot to this to really beef up the message. Now that I've got my answer, okay, well, here's something I've been dealing with is some denial. Okay, all right, cool. Love that for me. I'm going to actually pull Mons Tarot just for fun and for the juxtaposition because I think it's fun. Okay, what am I in denial about? What am I in denial about? Let's just call me out in front of like 100 people. That's fine. We can do that. It's fine. Okay, what am I in denial about currently? Opportunities. Yes, for sure. Scared to take the next step on my next project? Absolutely. I have my pre-project launch jitters. I have a lot of fear of success. There's ways in which a successful project or work for me is very exposing in a way that's kind of uncomfortable. I don't always really love that feeling. It takes me a minute to get comfortable. It also is very difficult for me to claim success, for me to take credit, I guess you could say, for success. That's hard for me. It is a bit of a shadow that I definitely deal with. So I'm in a bit of denial about maybe opportunities in my life right now. That's valid. That definitely happens. And we have the Page of Cups. I was just speaking about this, the vulnerability piece, the vulnerability, the being in a fishbowl. So I always tend to drag my feet a bit as I get closer to a project launch. That's why we don't have a Kickstarter campaign out for Unicorn's Journey Oracle yet, because I hit this point and I'm like, I'm scared to move forward. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. And that's happened with all of my projects. I know this feeling. I have befriended it. I understand it, but I still tend to compartmentalize it a bit and not look at it in the face, right? So here I've gotten a very effective shadow work reading simply by just asking the question first of one deck, what is in my shadow right now that I should maybe address? It's having an impact. And then I used tarot to sort of build on that, right? That's an easy way to just begin to dip into shadow work practice. Now, don't forget, if you've got some intense stuff lurking in your shadow, you might pull a card like this and get something quite intense in response, and you might not be prepared. So my advice always when doing any kind of shadow work is first know your own level, know what you are capable of handling and hearing. And that's always going to have to come first. Secondly, don't be afraid to pick it all up, put it away, and walk away. You do not have to sit with a message that is taking you to a place you don't feel equipped to handle in that moment. I will always say, we always say, never scoop up your cards and don't sit with them. Yeah, unless you just got triggered and you need to freaking walk away. You might not be ready for that message right now. That's valid. So that's number one. Give yourself permission always to walk away from an uncomfortable shadow work, pull, draw, journaling, prompt, whatever. If it is hitting you and you're like, if it's spiraling you, if you find yourself really struggling, walk the hell away. Give yourself permission to come at it again a different day. That's completely valid. Number two, have someone on standby. Have somebody you know you can reach out to. If you're about to do some shadow work, maybe don't do it, number one, when you're in a bad place. If you're already anxious and struggling, that is not the time to do shadow work. Shadow work is something to do when you feel strong, confident, comfortable, pretty grounded. But if you're going to do some shadow work, if you're going to pull cards intentionally to call yourself out, make sure you have somebody in your life, friend or even an acquaintance that you have that kind of relationship with, but a friend, or it could be a therapist, somebody that if you get actively really like triggered, or if it really takes you to a place that you're like really struggling, you have somebody you can just kind of unpack with a little bit. Hey, I pulled a card, I'm feeling bad, or just somebody you can be around so you're not alone. Sometimes that's important too. So always care for your mental health first when doing this kind of work. That is critical. And I think sometimes we bandy about shadow work, no big deal, and we don't talk about the deeper, darker places of it. And it can be a lot. I've been doing intentional shadow work since I was like 21 years old. So I feel like it's easy breezy, no big deal for me, but I still get triggered by my own work. So it is a thing, especially if you have trauma, especially if you have a past, things can come up that you might not be ready for that day, no matter how many years of comfort and practice you have with doing shadow work. So give yourself permission always to honor yourself, your limits, and Treat yourself with kindness, compassion, super important. That was a big question. It's a big question, but I hope that was helpful.